Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for holding this timely markup. Here we are in the midst of crisis in the Middle East, ongoing crisis in the Middle East and Ukraine, and so I think it's terrific to see this leadership from Chairman Luetkemeyer and you to schedule this markup to talk about national security. On this particular bill, Holding Iranian Leaders Accountable Act, one that this committee has marked up in the past and passed previously. I want to thank first my friend from California, Mr. Vargas, for working on this with me. And I appreciate the partnership across the financial services and foreign affairs committees on these type of bills. As we've talked and witnessed over and over again, including the members on a bipartisan basis that watched the horrific film of people being beheaded with a hoe or burned alive or being shot in their cars or gunned down as they ran across a field, Hamas is a creature of Iranian money and training. And the most recent terror attacks against Israel necessitate additional financial retaliation against Hamas's enabler and puppet master, Iran. To prevent further atrocities being perpetrated against the people of Israel, we must ensure all avenues for terror financing are cut off and more closely scrutinized the finances of Iran's government officials. This bill would require the Treasury Secretary to estimate the illicit and corrupt assets held by Iran's most senior leaders and potentially publish those assets online for all Iranians to see. Let's publish it in Farsi, Mr. Chairman, and let the Iranian people see where all this money's going. It isn't going to humanitarian causes. It's long overdue for Iranian civilians who suffer under this regime to see exactly how their rulers live. In addition, this bill would require the Secretary to seek the closure of accounts connected to those assets wherever they may be held. Mr. Chairman, let me point out that this bill responds to several questions raised when a previous version of this legislation was passed by the House back in 2017. First, I've made the asset report less onerous in order to implement by limiting the number of leaders required in each report. This will allow the Treasury Office of Terrorism and Financial Intelligence to compile this information accurately, on time, and much more effectively. Second, there are several provisions in this legislation that are designed to maximize cooperations by Iranians and foreign financial institutions with U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies. Under my bill, an Iranian leader may not appear in the report because they simply were not selected. Alternatively, they may be excluded because they're providing significant cooperation with U.S. intelligence or law enforcement agencies. The point here is Iranian officials can only guarantee they'll be left out of a report by aiding efforts against the mullahs in Tehran. At the same time, the leaders who are covered by this bill will never know which of their colleagues is absent from a report because of cooperation with the U.S. or because of sheer luck. This will sow additional distrust in the regime and incentivize officials to turn on the Ayatollahs when they can. A decade ago, Reuters concluded that Iran's supreme leader may control real estate holdings and other assets worth $95 billion. In 2019, the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad estimated the supreme leader's assets at $200 billion. $200 billion. The GDP of Iran is like $380 billion. Let that sink in, Mr. Chairman. Meanwhile, Iran's own labor ministry has stated that a third of the country's population lives in extreme poverty. Earlier this year, an Iranian newspaper reported that some were even selling their own organs to survive. It's time for Iran's civilians to see how corrupt the Ayatollahs are, how they've amassed wealth while ordinary people live in despair. As we continue to monitor the region, we cannot delay in restricting the financial assets of the Ayatollahs and other senior officials in Tehran. Holding Iranian Leaders Accountable Act treats the Iranian government as the crime family they are. This bill's strategy resembles the approach that we've taken to break up the mafia in the past. I urge a yes vote, and I thank Mr. Vargas, and I yield back to the chair.